Welcome to Conk's Corner. I'm dizzy. Woo-wee! Welcome to Conk's Corner. My name is John Voth. I am reading Harry Potter every single day. We started in quarantine. I have not read the books before. I do not know what happens. Please do not spoil anything in the chat, because sometimes I go down there and read what people say. So please don't spoil it. We have a lovely moderator, Lois, down there. Whoa, that got me real dizzy. Oh, man. Yeah, I got a shofar. Shofar, so good. Okay, this Friday, end of the week, we read, I think, four times this week, maybe 5 times, I can't remember. Heads up, next, I'm starting to move. I'm packing all of my things, and I'm gradually moving. So, I don't know if I'll be reading on Monday or Tuesday. You know, I'll have to see where I get, how much of it might be moving all this computer stuff. So check the Discord. I will let you know there what day I will be picking it up. It won't be a very long wait. It's just I don't know if I'll be back on Monday. So check that out. Somebody get John an inhaler. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. My eras got blown away. My eras? My whole history was blown away. Okay, so where did we end up? We ended up, oh right. So Harry's gonna sneak into not Hermione's, Umbridge's office to try and talk to Sirius about his dad. I was thinking about this. It seems like a really big action to go through, to risk all of that just to talk to his uncle about his dad. You know, to risk everything, to be like, hey, what was up with my dad? Why was he so mean? You know, to risk everything. It seems like a huge action, unless I'm mistaken and they were going to do something else there. Yeah. Okay. So yes, plurs. Yes, plurs. Let's get started on the reading, shall we? I hope you're all having a great day. I am. I'm having a good day. I'm going to go and to barbecue some food after this, which I'm excited about. I'm gonna see some friends when they're gonna barbecue, so that's gonna be nice. It's gonna be a good weekend, except I'm gonna be packing, and I hate packing. Oh well. But I hope you all are having a good day too. Okay, let's get started, shall we? They were about to go, yeah, they're planning the whole Umbridge thing. And he's about to see Snape for the first time after having seen Snape's memory, that horrible memory. What flavor is the scar today? It is... oh, it's on the package. Where's the package? It's cherry. Cherry. Mmm! Good old cherry. Okay, let's go. Let's go! Let's get this bread! By the time they reach the dungeons... Actually, you're gonna take this off and start the regular one, because that's pretty loud. By the time they reached the dungeons, neither Harry nor Ron was speaking to Hermione. Undeterred, she took advantage of their silence to maintain an uninterrupted flow of dire warnings, all uttered under her breath in a vehement hiss that caused Seamus to waste 5 whole minutes checking his cauldron for leaks. Get out of here, fly. Just finished packing for college. Oh, hope you have a good time there, Night Owl Nerd. Snape, meanwhile, seemed to have decided to act as though Harry were invisible. Harry was, of course, well used to this tactic, as it was one of Uncle Vernon's favorites, and on the whole was grateful he had to suffer nothing worse. In fact, compared to what he usually had to endure from Snape, in the way of taunts and snide remarks, he found the new approach something of an improvement, and was pleased to find that, when left well alone, he was able to concoct an invigoration draught quite easily. At the end of the lesson, he scooped some of the potion into a flask, corked it, and took it up to Snape's desk for marking, feeling that he might have at last have scraped an E. He had just turned away when he heard a smashing noise. Malfoy gave a gleeful yell of laughter. Harry whipped around. His potion simply lay in pieces on the floor, and Snape was surveying him with a look of gloating pleasure. "Whoops," he said softly. "Another 0, then, Potter." Harry was too incensed to speak. Not cool. Nuh-uh. Not cool. Harry whipped He strode back to his cauldron, intending to fill another flask and force Snape to mark it, but saw to his horror that the rest of the contents had vanished. "I'm sorry," said Hermione, with her hands over her mouth. "I'm really sorry, Harry. I thought you'd finished, so I cleared up." Harry could not bring himself to answer. He's just, yeah, one of those moments where it's like, I need a moment. I can't answer to anything. When the bell rang, he hurried out of the dungeon without a backwards glance, and made sure that he found himself a seat between Neville and Seamus for lunch, so that Hermione could not start nagging him again about using Umbridge's office. He was in such a bad mood by the time he got to divination that he had quite forgotten his careers appointment with Professor McGonagall, remembering it only when Ron asked him why he wasn't in her office. He hurtled back upstairs and arrived out of breath, only a few minutes late. "Oh, sorry, Professor," he panted as he closed the door. "I forgot." "No matter, Potter," she said briskly. But as she spoke, somebody else sniffed from the corner. Harry looked around. Professor Umbridge.
Boo! Go on, get out of here! Boo! Get off the stage!
More like Dumbridge.
Umbridge, more like Dumbridge. Love that. Professor Umbridge was sitting there, a clipboard on her knee, a fussy little pie frill around her neck, and a small, horribly smug smile on her face. "Sit down, Potter," said Professor McGonagall tersely. Her hands shook slightly as she shuffled the many pamphlets littering her desk. Harry sat down with his back to Umbridge, and did his best to pretend he could not hear the scratching of her quill on her clipboard. "Well, Potter, this meeting is to talk over any career ideas you might have, and to help you decide which subjects you should continue into the 6th and 7th years." It's a bit far over for me. There we go, said Professor McGonagall. "Have you had any thoughts about what you would like to do after you leave Hogwarts?" Said Harry. He was finding the scratching noise from behind him very distracting. "Yes?" Professor McGonagall prompted Harry. "Well, I thought of maybe being an Auror," Harry mumbled. "You'd need top grades for that," said Professor McGonagall, extracting a small dark leaflet from under the mass on her desk and opening it. "They ask for a minimum of 5 newts, and nothing under exceeds expectations grade, I see. Then you would be required. That's a hard one to do in Scottish. To undergo a stringent series of character and aptitude tests at the Auror office. It's a difficult career path, Potter. They only take the best. In fact, I don't think anybody has been taken on in the last 3 years." At this moment, Professor Umbridge gave a very tiny cough, as though she was trying to see how quietly she could do it. Professor McGonagall ignored her. "You'll want to know which subjects you ought to take, I suppose," she went on, talking a little louder than before. Yes," said Harry. "Defense against the dark arts, I suppose." Naturally. Oh, said Professor McGonagall crisply. "I would also advise..." Professor Umbridge gave another cough. A little more audible this time. Professor McGonagall closed her eyes for a moment, opened them again, and continued as though nothing had happened. Lovely, beautiful Scotland. That's the way I get into it. "I would also advise transfiguration, because Aurors frequently need to transfigure or untransfigure in their work. And I ought to tell you now, Potter, that I do not accept students into minute classes until they have achieved exceeds expectations or higher at ordinary wizarding level." Oh, I'm screwing up with this with her accent today. I'd say you're averaging acceptable at the moment, so you'll need to put in some good hard work before the exams to stand a chance of continuing. Then you ought to do charms, always useful, and potions. Yes, Potter, potions, she added, with the merest flicker of a smile. Poisons and antidotes are essential study for Aurors, and I must tell you that Professor Snape absolutely refuses to take students who get anything other than outstanding in their owls. So, Professor Umbridge gave her most pronounced cough yet. It's like she's a baby owl coughing up. The Scottish has a Welsh tinge to it. I like it. Okay, that works. Yep, man, I can't tell if I want McGonagall to be my mom or my teacher. Should I see a therapist about that? That's funny. May I offer you a cough drop, Dolores? Professor McGonagall asked curtly, without looking at Professor Umbridge. Oh no, thank you very much, said Umbridge, with that simpering laugh Harry hated so much. I just wondered whether I could make the teeniest interruption, Minerva. I dare say you'll find you can, said Professor McGonagall through tightly gritted teeth. I was just wondering whether Mr. Potter's quite the temperament for an aura, said Professor Umbridge sweetly. Oh, something's different here. Were you? Said Professor McGonagall haughtily. Well, Potter, she continued, as though there had been no interruption, if you are serious in this ambition, I would advise you to concentrate hard on bringing your transfiguration and potions up to scratch. I see Professor Flitwick has graded you between acceptable and exceeds expectations for the last 2 years, so your charm work seems satisfactory. As for defense against the dark art, as for defense against the dark arts, your marks have been generally high. Professor Lupin in particular thought you are. Are you quite sure you wouldn't like a cough drop, Dolores? She's so annoyed. Passive-aggressive wars fight. It's so funny. Are you sure? Are you sure? Oh, no need. Thank you, Minerva. Simpered Professor Umbridge, who had just coughed her loudest yet. I was just concerned that you might not have Harry's most recent defense against the dark arts marks in front of you. I'm quite sure I slipped in a note. But this thing, said Professor McGonagall in a tone of revulsion, as she pulled a sheet of pink parchment from between the leaves of Harry's folder. She glanced down at it, her eyebrows slightly raised, then placed it back into the folder without comment. Yes, as I was saying, Potter, Professor Lupin thought you showed a pronounced aptitude for the subject, and obviously for an aura. Did you not understand my note, Minerva? Asked Professor Umbridge in honeyed tones, quite forgetting to cough. Of course, I understood it, said Professor McGonagall, her teeth clenched so tightly the words came out a little muffled. Well, then, I am confused. I'm afraid I don't quite understand how you can give Mr. Potter false hope that... Well then, no. False hope, repeated Professor McGonagall, still refusing to look round at Professor Umbridge. He's achieved high marks in all his defense against the dark arts tests. I'm terribly sorry to contradict you, Minerva, but as you will see from my note, Harry has been achieving very poor results in his classes with me. I should have made my meaning plainer, said Professor McGonagall, turning at last to look Umbridge directly in the eyes. He has achieved high marks in all defense against the dark arts tests set by a competent teacher. Ooh! Shots fired! Oh! That's what... yes! Yes, McGonagall! Yes, McGonagall! Yes! Professor Umbridge's smile vanished as suddenly as a light bulb blowing. She sat back in her chair, turned a sheet on her clipboard, and began scribbling very fast indeed, her bulging eyes rolling from side to side. Professor McGonagall turned back to Harry, her thin nostrils flared, her eyes burning. Any questions, Potter? Damn. That was really good. Yes, said Harry. What sort of character and aptitude tests do the Ministry do on you, if you get enough newts? Well, you'll need to demonstrate the ability to react well to pressure and so forth, said Professor McGonagall. Perseverance and dedication, because aura training takes a further 3 years, not to mention very high skills in practical defense. It'll mean a lot more study, even after you've left school. So unless you've prepared to... I think you'll also find, said Umbridge, her voice very cold now. Oh, okay. It's a bit different. I think you'll also find, said Umbridge, her voice very cold now, that the Ministry looks into the records of those applying to be auras. The criminal records. Unless you're prepared to take even more exams after Hogwarts, you should really look at another... Which means that this boy has as much chance of becoming an aura as Dumbledore has of ever returning to this school. A very good chance, then, said Professor McGonagall. Potter has a criminal record, said Umbridge loudly. Potter has been cleared of all charges, said McGonagall, even more loudly. Professor Umbridge stood up. She was so short that this did not make a great deal of difference, but her fussy, simpering demeanor had given place to a hard fury that made her broad, flabby face look oddly sinister. Potter has no chance whatsoever of becoming an aura! Professor McGonagall got to her feet too, and in her case, this was a much more impressive move. She towered over Professor Umbridge. Potter, she said in ringing tones, I will assist you to become an aura, if it is the last thing I do. If I have to coach you nightly, I will make sure you achieve the required results. The Minister for Magic will never employ Harry Potter, said Umbridge, her voice rising furiously. There may well be a new Minister for Magic by the time Potter is ready to join, shouted Professor McGonagall. Aha! Shrieked Professor Umbridge, pointing a stubby finger at McGonagall. Yes, of course! That's what you want, isn't it, Minerva McGonagall? You want Cornelius Fudge replaced by Albus Dumbledore! You think you'll be where I am, don't you? Senior Under-Secretary to the Minister and Headmistress to boot! You are raving, said Professor McGonagall, superbly disdainful. Potter, that concludes a careers consultation. Harry swung his bag over his shoulder and hurried out of the room, not daring to look at Professor Umbridge. He could hear her and Professor McGonagall continuing to shout at each other all the way back along the corridor. That was great. I did not expect that at all. Oh, what a big fight. That was a big fight. Damn. Yeah, great scene. Really great scene. Yeah, that came out of nowhere. I didn't expect Minnie, is that what you call her? To lose it like that. That was pretty great. Yeah, I expected them to like have it out in some kind of wizard wand battle or something at some point, but they're just having it out in the open. That's awesome. I've been waiting for this since yesterday. I've been waiting for this since the day of my birth. Okay, let's keep going. Where are we? Professor Umbridge was still breathing as though she had just run a race when she strode into their defense against the dark arts lesson that afternoon. I hope you've thought better of what you're planning to do, Harry, Hermione whispered, the moment they had opened their books to Chapter 34, Non-Retaliation and Negotiation. Umbridge looks like she's in a really bad mood already. Every now and then, Umbridge shot glowering looks at Harry, who kept his head down. Just going... kept his head down, staring at defensive magical theory, his eyes unfocused, thinking. He could just imagine Professor McGonagall's reaction if he was caught trespassing in Professor Umbridge's office mere hours after she had vouched for him. There was nothing to stop him simply going back to Gryffindor Tower and hoping that sometime during the next summer holidays, he would have a chance to ask Sirius about the scene he had witnessed in the Pensieve. Nothing, except that the thought of taking this sensible course of action made him feel as though a lead weight had dropped into his stomach. And then there was the matter of Fred and George, whose diversion was already planned, not to mention the knife Sirius had given him, which was currently residing in his school bag along with his father's old invisibility cloak. But the fact remained that if he was caught... Dumbledore sacrificed himself to keep you in school, Harry, whispered Hermione, raising her book to hide her face from Umbridge. And if you get thrown out today, it will have all been for nothing. He could abandon the plan and simply learn to live with the memory of what his father had done on a summer's day more than 20 years ago. And then he remembered Sirius in the fire upstairs in the Gryffindor common room.
You're less like your father than I thought. The risk would have been what made it fun for James.
But did he want to be like his father anymore? Harry, don't do it! Please don't do it! Hermione said in anguished tones as the bell rang at the end of class. Great performance of a great scene. Thank you, everybody. That's nice. Thank you for the compliments. McGonagall has always been affectionate towards Harry in her own way. She got him his first broom, and it was the nicest one available. That's true. Yeah, she's always been protective. Hard shell, soft heart. Just like a Kinder Surprise, except it's the other way around. Soft shell, hard heart. Where are we? Ron seemed determined to give neither his opinion nor his advice. He would not look at Harry, though when Hermione opened her mouth to try dissuading Harry some more, he said in a low voice, "Give it a rest, okay? He can make up his own mind." Harry's heart beat very fast as he left the classroom. He was halfway along the corridor outside when he heard the unmistakable sounds of a diversion going off in the distance. Let's get some tense music going on, hey? I think when I'm back, I'll have more music options too, because this is just the same dangerous, tense music. Whereas now I want some creeper music and some fun music too. I just don't have that on here yet. Okay. There were screams and yells reverberating from somewhere above them. People exiting the classrooms all around Harry were stopping in their tracks and looking up at the ceiling fearfully. Umbridge came pelting out of her classroom as fast as her short legs would carry her. Pulling out her wand, she hurried off in the opposite direction. It was now or never. "Harry, please!" Hermione pleaded weakly. But he had made up his mind. Hitching his bag more securely onto his shoulder, he set off at a run, weaving in and out of students now hurrying in the opposite direction to see what all the fuss was about in the East Wing. Harry reached the corridor to Umbridge's office and found it deserted. Dashing behind a large suit of armor whose helmet creaked around to watch him, he pulled open his bag, seized Sirius's knife, and donned the invisibility cloak. He then crept slowly and carefully back out from behind the suit of armor and along the corridor until he reached Umbridge's door. Barbie girl every time Filch appears. Yeah. He inserted the blade of the magical knife into the crack around it and moved it gently up and down, then withdrew it. There was a tiny click, and the door swung open. He ducked inside the office, closed the door quickly behind him, and looked around. Nothing was moving except the horrible kittens that were still frolicking on the wall plates above the confiscated broomsticks. Harry pulled off his cloak and, striding over to the fireplace, found what he was looking for within seconds: a small box containing glittering flue powder. He crouched down in front of the empty grate, his hands shaking. He had never done this before, though he thought he knew how it must work. Sticking his head into the fireplace, he lit it aflame, and his face burned. Sticking his head into the fireplace, he took a large pinch of powder and dropped it onto the logs stacked neatly beneath him. They exploded at once into emerald green flames. "Number 12, Grimmauld Place," Harry said loudly and clearly. It was one of the most curious sensations he had ever experienced. He had traveled by flue powder before, of course, But then it had been his entire body that had spun around and around the flames, through the network of wizarding fireplaces that stretched over the country. This time, his knees remained firm upon the cold floor of Umbridge's office, and only his head hurtled through the emerald fire. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the spinning stopped. Feeling rather sick, and as though he were wearing an exceptionally hot muffler around his head, Harry opened his eyes to find that he was looking up out of the kitchen fireplace at the long wooden table, where a man sat poring over a piece of parchment. "Sirius?" The man jumped and looked round. It was not Sirius, but Lupin. "Harry," he said, looking thoroughly shocked. What's happened? Is everything all right?" "Yeah," said Harry. I just wondered, I just fancied a chat with Sirius." "I'll call him," said Lupin, getting to his feet, still looking perplexed. "He went upstairs to look for Creature. He seems to be hiding in the attic again." And Harry saw Lupin hurry out of the kitchen. Now he was left with nothing to look at but the chair and table legs. He wondered why Sirius had never mentioned how very uncomfortable it was to speak out of the fire. His knees were already objecting painfully to their prolonged contact with Umbridge's hard stone floor. Lupin returned with Sirius at his heels moments later.
"What is it?"
said Sirius urgently, sweeping his long, dark hair out of his eyes and dropping to the ground in front of the fire, so that he and Harry were on a level. Lupin knelt down too, looking very concerned.
"Are you all right? Do you need help?"
"No," said Harry. "It's nothing like that. I just wanted to talk about my dad." They exchanged a look of great surprise, but Harry did not have time to feel awkward or embarrassed. His knees were becoming sorer by the second, and he guessed 5 minutes had already passed from the start of the diversion. George had only guaranteed him 20. He therefore plunged immediately into the story of what he had seen in the Pensieve. When he had finished, neither Sirius nor Lupin spoke for a moment. Then Lupin said quietly, "I wouldn't like you to judge your father on what you saw there, Harry. He was only 15. "I'm 15, said Harry heatedly.
"Look, Harry,"
said Sirius placatingly, I think.
"James and Snape hated each other from the moment they set eyes on each other. It was just one of those things. You can understand that, can't you? I think James was everything Snape wanted to be. He was popular, he was good at Quidditch, good at pretty much everything. And Snape was just this little oddball who was up to his eyes in the dark arts. And James, whatever else he may have appeared to you, Harry, always hated the dark arts."
"Yeah," said Harry, "but he just attacked Snape for no good reason, just because you said you were bored," he finished with a slightly apologetic note in his voice. Okay, so not that aggressive.
I'm not proud of it."
Lupin looked sideways at Sirius, then said,
"Look, Harry, what you've got to understand is that your father and Sirius were the best in the school at whatever they did. Everyone thought they were the height of cool. They sometimes got a bit carried away. If we were sometimes arrogant little Burks, you mean?"
said Sirius. Lupin smiled. He kept messing up his hair, said Harry in a pained voice. Sirius and Lupin laughed.
"I've forgotten he used to do that,"
said Sirius affectionately.
"Was he playing with a snitch?"
said Lupin eagerly. "Yeah," said Harry, watching uncomprehendingly as Sirius and Lupin beamed reminiscently. "Well, I thought he was a bit of an idiot."
"Of course he was a bit of an idiot,"
said Sirius bracingly.
"We were all idiots. Well, not Moody so much,"
he said fairly, looking at Lupin. But Lupin shook his head.
"Did I ever tell you to lay off Snape?"
he said.
"Did I ever have the guts to tell you I thought you were out of order?" "Yeah, well,"
said Sirius,
"you made us feel ashamed of ourselves sometimes. That was something."
"And," said Harry doggedly, determined to say everything that was on his mind now he was here, "he kept looking over at the girls by the lake, hoping they were watching him."
"Oh, well, he always made a fool of himself whenever Lily was around,"
said Sirius, shrugging.
He couldn't stop himself showing off whenever he got near.
How come she married him? Harry asked miserably. She hated him.
Nah, she didn't, said Sirius. She started going out with him in 7th year, said Lupin. Once James had deflated his head a bit, said Sirius. And stopped hexing people just for the fun of it, said Lupin. Even Snape? Said Harry. Well, said Lupin slowly. Snape was a special case. I mean, he never lost an opportunity to curse James, so you couldn't really expect James to take that lying down, could you? And my mum was okay with that. She didn't know too much about it, to tell you the truth, said Sirius. I mean, James didn't take Snape on dates with her and jinx him in front of her, did he? Sirius frowned at Harry, who was still unconvinced. Look, he said, your father was the best friend I ever had, and he was a good person. A lot of people are idiots at the age of 15. He grew out of it. Yeah, okay, said Harry heavily. I just never thought I'd feel sorry for Snape. Now you mention it, said Lupin, a faint crease between his eyebrows. How did Snape react when he found you'd seen all this? He told me he'd never teach me occlumency again, said Harry indifferently. Like, that's a big disappointment. He what? Shouted Sirius, causing Harry to jump and inhale a mouthful of ashes. Are you serious, Harry? Said Lupin quickly. He stopped giving you lessons. Yeah, said Harry, surprised at what he considered a great overreaction. But it's okay, I don't care. It's a bit of relief to tell you that... I'm coming up there to have a word with Snape, said Sirius forcefully, and he actually made to stand up, but Lupin wrenched him back down again. Who's saying this? Lupin. If anyone's going to tell Snape. If anyone's going to tell Snape, it will be me, he said firmly. But Harry, first of all, you're going to go back to Snape and tell him that on no account is he to stop giving you lessons. When Dumbledore hears... I can tell him that. I can't tell him that. He'd kill me, said Harry, outraged. You didn't see him when we got out of the Pensieve. Harry, there's nothing so important as you learning occlumency, said Lupin sternly. Do you understand me? Nothing. Okay, said Harry, thoroughly discomposed, not to mention annoyed. I'll try and say something to him, but it won't be... He fell silent. He could hear distant footsteps. Is that creature coming downstairs? No, said Sirius, glancing behind him. Must be somebody on your end. Harry's heart skipped several beats. I'd better go, he said hastily, and pulled his head backwards out of Grimmauld Place fire. For a moment his head seemed to be revolving on his shoulders. Then he found himself kneeling in front of Umbridge's fire with it firmly back on, and watching the emerald flames flicker and die. Quickly, quickly! He heard... Oh, wait. Wait a second. Oh, there's somebody else in there. Oh, man. Here's something I was also wondering. Just for flow, you know, when I'm reading, there are a lot of he saids or so on saids. You know, when it has a description, like it says said Harry heavily, right? I'm debating, you know, I'll say those if it has adjectives, but times when it just says, for example, she didn't know too much about it to tell you the truth. I mean, James didn't take... Or saying, she didn't know too much about it to tell you the truth, said Sirius. I mean, James didn't take... Might just be better for the flow if I take those said Siriuses out. You know who's speaking because I'm doing the accent. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that? I'm playing around with it. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but it just occurred to me. Okay. Quickly, quickly! He heard a wheezy voice mutter right beside the office door. Ah, she's left it open. Harry dived for the invisibility cloak and had just managed to pull it back over himself when Filch burst into the office. He looked absolutely delighted about something and was talking to himself feverishly as he crossed the room, pulled open a drawer in Umbridge's desk, and began rifling through the papers inside it.
You think agreed? It's fine to leave them out. Yeah, try it. Agreed. Okay, everybody's on board. So, what about when there's... No, if there's adjectives like said Harry heavily, I'm going to leave those. Because those are still character descriptions and add to the character. The inner life of the character. But when it's just he said, she said, and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to leave it out. Okay. There we go. Okay, Filch is in the office. Filch is in the office.
Approval for whipping. Approval for whipping. I can do it at last. They've had it coming to them for years.
He pulled out a piece of parchment, kissed it, then shuffled rapidly back out of the door, clutching it to his chest. Oh, man. Oh, no. Approval for whipping. Umbridge found Fred and George, approved it on the spot to get the boys whipped in front of everybody, probably. Oh, no. Harry leapt to his feet and making sure he had his bag and the invisibility cloak was completely covered, and making sure he had his bag and that the invisibility cloak was completely covering him, he wrenched open the door and hurried out of the office after Filch, who was hobbling along faster than Harry had ever seen him go. One landing down from Umbridge's office, Harry thought it was safe to become visible again. He pulled off the cloak, shoved it in his bag, and hurried onward. There was a great deal of shouting and movement coming from the entrance hall. He ran down the marble staircase and found what looked like most of the school assembled there. Holy smokes. Oh, man. It was just like the night when Trelawney had been sacked. Students were standing all around the walls in a great ring. Some of them, Harry noticed, covered in a substance that looked very like stink sap. Teachers and ghosts were also in the crowd. Prominent among the onlookers were members of the inquisitorial squad, who were all looking exceptionally pleased with themselves. And Peeves, who was bobbing overhead, gazed down at Fred and George, who stood in the middle of the floor with the unmistakable look of two people who had just been cornered.
So,
said Umbridge triumphantly. Harry realized she was standing just a few stairs in front of him, once more looking down upon her prey.
So, you think it's amusing to turn a school corridor into a swamp, do you?
Pretty amusing, yeah, said Fred, looking up at her without the slightest sign of fear. Nice. Filch elbowed his way closer to Umbridge, almost crying with happiness. Oh my god. Probably something like that.
I've got the form, headmistress,
he said hoarsely, waving the piece of parchment Harry had just seen him take from her desk.
I've got the form, and I've got the wits waiting. Let me do it now. Very good, Argus,
she said. Oh, I could leave that out.
You two,
she went on, gazing down at Fred and George,
are about to learn what happens to wrongdoers in my school.
You know what? Said Fred. I don't think we are. He turned to his twin. George, said Fred. I think we've outgrown full-time education. Yeah, I've been feeling that way myself, said George lightly. Time to test our talents in the real world. Do you reckon? Said Fred. Definitely, said George. And before Umbridge could say a word, they raised their wands and said together, Accio brooms! Harry heard a loud crash somewhere in the distance. Looking to his left, he had ducked just in time. Fred and George's broomsticks, one still trailing the heavy chain and iron peg with which Umbridge had fastened them to the wall, were hurtling along the corridor towards their owners. They turned left, streaked down the stairs, and stopped sharply in front of the twins, the chain clattering loudly on the flagstone floor. We won't be seeing you, Fred told Professor Umbridge, swinging his leg over his broomstick. Yeah, don't bother to keep in touch, said George, mounting his own. Fred looked round at the assembled students, at the silent, watchful crowd. If anyone fancies buying a portable swamp, as demonstrated upstairs, come to number 93 Diagon Alley, Weasley's Wizarding Whizzes, he said in a loud voice. Our new premises! Special discounts to Hogwarts students who swear they're going to use our products to get rid of this old bat, added George, pointing at Professor Umbridge. Stop them! Shrieked Umbridge, but it was too late. As the inquisitorial squad closed in, Fred and George kicked off from the floor, shooting 15 feet into the air, the iron pegs swinging dangerously below. Fred looked across the hall at the poltergeist bobbing on his level above the crowd. Give her hell from us, Peeves. And Peeves, who Harry had never seen take an order from a student before, swept his belled hat from his head and sprang to a salute as Fred and George wheeled about to tumultuous applause from the students below and sped out of the open front doors into the glorious sunset. Oh, I just got goosebumps. Look at that. I don't think you can see it. That was so freaking awesome. It's so cool. That was such a good moment. I totally expected them to get like whipped in front of the whole school and for this to be like the most horrible scene of all time. And then they just take off. Pulling the blanket out from underneath me once again. Man, this is so good. Oh, man. Got your conch. Great chapter. Do the air horn. Man, so good. So good. That was a great chapter. Well, yeah, really, really, really good chapter. I like that chapter a lot. Man, that was fun. Fred and George, really cool. You know, just start out in the books being like, oh yeah, bratty older brothers are just going like, oh yeah, let's do all this stuff. And they maintain that. And then they were a little bit douchey to Ron throughout all of it. You know, not being really great older brothers. And then again, good older brothers. And now this. So cool. So cool. It's so cool. My face hurts from all the smiley faces. So fun seeing Rex like reading for the first time. Yeah, it is. How do you think Mrs. Weasley would react to that? Oh, she'll be super unhappy. She's like, you didn't finish school? Did they finish school? No, they didn't finish school. No, she's gonna be pissed off about that. But they have already found their thing. They don't need to do anything else. That's their thing. They have been at school for their thing. They've been testing it all like that. All their tests and exams were all the pranks they were pulling. That shop's gonna take off. Are you kidding me? It's gonna take off. Chapter 30.
Grop, grop, got your conch, grop.
I don't know what grop is. The story of Fred and George's flight to freedom was retold so often over the next few days that Harry could tell it would soon become the stuff of Hogwarts legend. Within a week, even those who had been eyewitnesses were half convinced they had seen the twins dive bomb Umbridge on their brooms and pelt her with dung bombs before zooming out of the doors. In the immediate aftermath of their departure, there was a great wave of talk about copying them. Harry frequently heard students saying things like, honestly, some days I just feel like jumping on my broom and leaving this place. Or else, one more lesson like that, and I might just do a Weasley. Fred and George had made sure nobody was likely to forget them soon. For one thing, they had not left instructions on how to remove the swamp, that now filled the corridor on the 5th floor of the East Wing. Umbridge and Filch had been observed trying different means of removing it, but without success. Eventually, the area was roped off, and Filch, gnashing his teeth furiously, was given the task of punting students across it to their classrooms. Harry was certain that teachers like McGonagall or Flitwick would have removed the swamp in an instant, but just as in the case of Fred and George's wildfire whiz-bangs, they seemed to prefer to watch Umbridge struggle. Then, there were the 2 large broom-shaped holes in Umbridge's office door, through which Fred and George's clean sweeps had smashed to rejoin their masters. Filch fitted a new door and removed Harry's firebolt to the dungeons where, it was rumored, Umbridge had set an armed security troll to guard it. However, her troubles were far from over. Good. Good. Inspired by Fred and George's example, a great number of students were now vying for the newly vacant positions of troublemakers-in-chief. Nice. That's awesome. In spite of the new door, somebody managed to slip a hairy-snouted niffler into Umbridge's office, which promptly tore the place apart in its search for shiny objects. Leapt on somebody managed to slip a hairy-snouted niffler. Hairy-snouted niffler. What is that again? What's a niffler? Somebody can remind me in the chat. That'd be great. Hairy-snouted niffler into Umbridge's office, which promptly tore the place apart in its search for shiny objects, leapt on Umbridge when she entered and tried to gnaw the rings off her stubby fingers. Oh my gosh. Dung bombs and stink pellets were dropped so frequently in the corridors that it became the new fashion for students to perform bubblehead charms on themselves before leaving lessons, which ensured them a supply of fresh air, even though it gave them all the peculiar appearance of wearing upside-down goldfish bowls on their heads. Man, this is not looking good for Umbridge. She has no control over this school. This is not looking good for her. Sniffler is a creature from last year. Right, I know it's a creature, but the cute little animals that find gold. Right, they like shiny stuff. They did them in a lesson with Hagrid's Ron dug up the most leprechaun gold. Oh yeah. Whoa, gosh. I barely even remember that. So much stuff has happened. Holy smokes. Filch prowled the corridors with a horsewhip ready in his hands, desperate to catch miscreants. But the problem was that there were now so many of them, he never knew which way to turn. The Inquisitorial Squad was attempting to help him, but odd things kept happening to its members. Warrington of the Slytherin Quidditch team reported to the hospital wing with a horrible skin complaint that made him look as though he had been coated in cornflakes. That'd be kind of sweet whenever you're hungry. Pansy Parkinson, to Hermione's delight, missed all her lessons the following day as she had sprouted antlers. Meanwhile, it became clear just how many skiving snack boxes Fred and George had managed to sell before leaving Hogwarts. Umbridge only had to enter her classroom for the students assembled there to faint, vomit, develop dangerous fevers, or else spout blood from both nostrils. Shrieking with rage and frustration, she attempted to trace the mysterious symptoms to their source. But the students told her stubbornly they were suffering from Umbridgeitis. After putting 4 successive classes in detention and failing to discover their secret, she was forced to give up and allow the bleeding, swooning, sweating, and vomiting students to leave her classes in droves. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Yeah, screw you, Umbridge. You deserve all of this, and worse. Because she's put students in pain, wants to whip them. I hope she gets, don't tell me if she does, but I hope she gets her due.
I'm talking about death. She should die.
But not even one of the users of the snack boxes could compete with the Master of Chaos, Peeves, who seemed to have taken Fred's parting words deeply to heart, cackling mildly.
Got your cock?
Wait.
Sounds like this. Got your cock? Right, he talks like this, yeah.
Right. Cackling madly, he soared through the school, upending tables, bursting out of blackboards, toppling statues and vases. Twice he shot Mrs. Norris inside a suit of armor, from which she was rescued, yowling loudly by the furious caretaker. Peeves smashed lanterns and snuffed out candles, juggled burning torches over the heads of screaming students, caused neatly stacked piles of parchment to topple into fires or out of windows, flooded the second floor when he pulled off all the taps in the bathrooms.
When you gotta go, it's toilet time, it's toilet time.
Dropped a bag of tarantulas in the middle of the Great Hall during breakfast, and, whenever he fancied a break, spent hours at a time floating along after Umbridge and blowing loud raspberries every time she spoke. Wicked. wicked. This is so wicked. It's awesome. Oh, so good. People hate her more than Voldemort. Sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah, Conks is basically
Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, he is basically. None of the staff but Filch seemed to be stirring themselves to help her. Indeed, a week after Fred and George's departure, Harry witnessed Professor McGonagall walking right past Peeves, who was determinedly loosing a crystal chandelier, and could have sworn he heard her tell the poltergeist out of the corner of her mouth, "It unscrews the other way." Hell yeah! That's great. To cap matters, Montague had still not recovered from his sojourn in the toilet. I'm not going to do it a second time. He remained confused and disorientated, and his parents were to be observed one Tuesday morning striding up the front drive, looking extremely angry. "Should we say something?" said Hermione in a worried voice, pressing her cheek against the Charms window, so that she could see Mr. and Mrs. Montague marching inside. "About what happened to him, in case it helps Madame Pomfrey cure him." "Course not. He'll recover," said Ron indifferently. "Anyway, more trouble for Umbridge, isn't it?" said Harry in a satisfied voice. He and Ron both tapped the teacups they were supposed to be charming with their wands. Harry's sprouted 4 very short legs that could not reach the desk, and wriggled pointlessly in midair. What? Tap the key. They were supposed to be charming. Harry's teacup sprouted 4 short legs that could not reach the desk, and wriggled pointlessly in midair. Okay. Ron's grew 4 very thin, spindly legs that hoisted the cup off the desk with great difficulty, trembled for a few seconds, then folded, causing the cup to crack in two. The cup to crack in two. Cup to crack in two. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Reparo, said Hermione. Reparo, said Hermione quickly, mending Ron's cup with a wave of her hand. That's all very well, but what if Montague's permanently injured? Who cares? Said Ron irritably, while his teacup stood up drunkenly again, trembling violently at the knees. Montague shouldn't have tried to take all those points from Gryffindor, should he? You want to worry about anyone, Hermione? Worry about me! You? She said, catching her teacup as it scampered happily away across the desk on 4 sturdy little willowed-patterned legs, and replacing it in front of her. Why should I be worried about you? When Mum's next letter finally gets through Umbridge's screening process, said Ron bitterly, now holding his cup up while its frail legs tried feebly to support its weight. I'm going to be in deep trouble. I wouldn't be surprised if she sent another howler. But it'll be my fault Fred and George left. You wait, said Ron darkly. You'll say, I should have stopped them leaving. I should have grabbed the ends of their brooms and hung on or something. Yeah, it'll all be my fault. Well, if she does say that, it'll be very unfair. She couldn't have done anything. You couldn't have done anything. But I'm sure she won't. I mean, if it's really true they've got premises in Diagon Alley, they must have been planning this for ages. Yeah, but that's another thing. How did they get premises? Said Ron, hitting his teacup so hard with his wand that its legs collapsed again, and it lay twitching before him. It's a bit dodgy, isn't it? They'll need loads of galleons to afford the rent on a place in Diagon Alley. She'll want to know what they've been up to get their hands on that sort of gold. Well, yes, that occurred to me too, said Hermione, allowing her teacup to jog in neat little circles around Harry's, whose stubby little legs were still unable to touch the desktop. Why do they need to know these things? Why? How is that ever useful? How is what? For what purpose? It feels like math to me in school. Since graduating from high school, university, all I've ever had to use was plus, minus, divided, and multiplied. You know, barely even fractions. Why did we have to learn all that stuff? Why do they have to learn this? Why are they getting graded on this? It's never going to be used. They're going to be in the middle of a battle with Voldemort and be like, oh shoot, nice, I got a teacup. Hey, run over there and, you know, cup his eyes. So that Voldemort's running around with 2 cups in his eyes going, no, where are you, Harry? Yeah, you use math every day, but you don't use more than the basics than you learned. You don't use the X equals this and that and this and that to study for years. Never had to use that. I doubt any of you had to either. I think it's funny. Better practice on that. I'd love if my teacup would walk to me when I forgot where I put it down. They make everyone learn it for people who will actually use it. Magical tea parties. I guess so. Oh, we're getting up close to the end here. Okay, a little teacup running around. I've just been wondering whether Mundungus has persuaded them to sell stolen goods or something. He hasn't, said Harry curtly. How do you know? Said Ron and Hermione together. Because, Harry hesitated. But the moment to confess finally seemed to have come. There was no good to be gained in keeping silent if it meant anyone suspected that Fred and George were criminals. Because they got the gold from me, I gave them my Triwizard winnings last June. There was a shocked silence. Then Hermione's teacup jogged right over the edge of the desk and smashed on the floor. Oh, Harry! You didn't, she said. Yes, I did, said Harry mutinously. And I don't regret it either. I didn't need the gold, and they'll be great at running a joke shop. But this is excellent, said Ron, looking thrilled. It's all your fault, Harry. Mom can't blame me at all. Can I tell her? Yeah, I suppose you'd better, said Harry dully. Especially if she thinks they've received stolen cauldrons or something. Hermione said nothing at all for the rest of the lesson, but Harry had a shrewd suspicion that her self-restraint was bound to crack before long. Sure enough, once they had left the castle for break and were standing around in the weak May sunshine, she fixed Harry with a beady eye and opened her mouth with determined air. Harry interrupted her before she even had started. It's no good nagging me. It's done, he said firmly. Fred and George have got the gold, spent a good bit of it too, by the sounds of it, and I can't get it back from them, and I don't want to. So save your breath, Hermione. I wasn't going to say anything about Fred and George, she said in an injured voice. Ron snorted disbelievingly, and Hermione threw him a very dirty look. No, I wasn't, she said angrily. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask Harry when he's going to go back to Snape and ask for more occlumency lessons. Harry's heart sank. Once they had exhausted the subject of Fred and George's dramatic departure, which admittedly had taken many hours, Ron and Hermione had wanted to hear news of Sirius, as Harry had not confided in them the reason he had wanted to talk to Sirius in the first place. It had been hard to think of what to tell them. He had ended up saying, truthfully, that Sirius wanted Harry to resume occlumency lessons. He had been regretting this ever since. Hermione would not let the subject drop, and kept reverting to it when Harry least expected it. You can't tell me you've stopped having funny dreams, Hermione said now, because Ron told me you were muttering in your sleep again last night. Harry threw Ron a furious look. Ron had the grace to look ashamed of himself. You were only muttering a bit, he mumbled apologetically. Something about just a bit further. I dreamed I was watching you lot play Quidditch, Harry lied brutally. I was trying to get you to stretch out a bit further to grab the quaffle. Ron's ears went red. Harry felt a kind of vindictive pleasure. He had not, of course, dreamed anything of the sort. Okay. We're going to end there. It's going to his dream from last night. We're on page 600 out of 763. Ooh-wee, we're getting along in it. We're getting along. Well, obviously, they had to learn how to put legs on inanimate objects because that's the magical sport. Furniture wrestling. Okay, so while anybody's asking questions or anything they want to chat about, so just a reminder that I very likely will not be back on Monday. I don't know when next week I'll be back because I'm moving stuff out. So I'll have to take time to move everything I've set up there, also reset everything up there in here and there in the new place. So check the Discord, please, if you want updates. I can't give it yet on YouTube because I don't have enough subscribers. But who cares? I'm just doing this for you. I'm here for you. And also, let me know how I can help. Because I'm here for you. You want that guy helping you? I'm just here for you. How do you keep where you are on the specific page? Do you mean when I am on the page? I don't know. I mean, the paragraphs in the lining all looks different, right? So I just look back to where I stopped. That's never really been hard for me. I don't know. Good luck moving, John. Thank you, Jenny. Good luck with your move. Good luck. Thank you, Rachel. I've missed the streams for a while. Did you get more lava lamps? No. I got these way back in the day. We moved in with a bunch of friends, and we had a 70s party. I was like, we need lava lamps. And somebody on Craigslist, these are like actually from the 70s. This dude had a whole box full. He was selling them for super cheap. He was like, these are vintage lava lamps, dude, but I want them to go. I don't care about the money. I just want them to go to somebody who cares about them. He was so sweet. So I got these pretty cheap, genuine 70s lava lamps. And yeah, disconcerting. Good luck with your move. All the best with your move, John. How can you say math isn't useful when we're looking at COVID graphs all day? Yeah, I mean, you can read graphs without having to go to math school for a year, right? Unless you're making the graphs, which I doubt none of you are making COVID graphs. You don't need a ton of maths to learn how to read a graph. Just here's A, here's B. That's how a graph works. Man, if you take too long a break from book, I forget what I already read. Good luck, John. We're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too. Thank you, everybody. I still enjoy this a lot. I still enjoy these readings this time a lot with you. I'm still having a lot of fun, just like at the beginning. Gotta go to sleep. It's 4 a.m. in Spain. Have a good sleep, Danny. But you learn that math because someone in your class will become the people who make the graphs. Yeah, but make them electives if you're interested in them. What will your new address be? Nice try, Ruben. Engineer use math. Hey, I'm not saying math is useless. I'm just saying don't make every single person take it for 5 years when they never use it again. Make it electives. Okay, this is gonna be the next you know, Muggle clothing argument about how important math is. You can continue it on the Discord. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Hope you have fun. If you can, you know, I know there are some of you who are still in lockdown here in BC. It's not as bad as elsewhere in the world. So for the rest of you, hope you're doing okay. Hope you're having you know, finding things to distract you, and I hope this helps during COVID and quarantine. Yeah, you are loved. Don't forget that. You need math to make Muggle clothing. Okay, Tash. I love moving. Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. I will see you at some point again in the next week. Check out the Discord. Until then, see you later.